the truth in a storm of lies. They claim they love the market, but their words are just a game. For when freedom lights the fire, they just can't stand the flame. They say they hate tyranny, but just to disguise, cause they can't handle kindness or the truth behind your eyes. They talk a big talk, but their steps are so small. Authoritarian hearts don't want to free us all. Oh, the lies they weave, so tangled and so bleak. Afraid of the change, of the justice we seek. Javier, you stand with our hearts that are vast and true, a beacon in the dark, guiding us through. So let them shout, let them rage against the light. Javier's our captain in this fight for what is right. Free markets, open hearts, a future bright and new. They can't understand, Javier, the strength in you. The silver skies, Javier's making waves, the truth in a storm of lies. They claim they love the market, but their words are just a game. For when freedom lights the fire, they just can't stand the flame. They say they hate tyranny, but just to disguise, cause they can't handle kindness or the truth behind your eyes. They talk a big talk, but their steps are so small. Authoritarian hearts don't want to free us all. Oh, the lies they weave, so tangled and so bleak. Afraid of the change, of the justice we seek. Javier, you stand with our hearts that are vast and true, a beacon in the dark, guiding us through. So let them shout, let them rage against the light. Javier's our captain in this fight for what is right. Free markets, open hearts, a future bright and new. They can't understand, Javier, the strength in you. The silver skies, Javier's making waves, the truth in a storm of lies. They claim they love the market, but their words are just a game. For when freedom lights the fire, they just can't stand the flame. They say they hate tyranny, but just to disguise, cause they can't handle kindness or the truth behind your eyes. They talk a big talk, but their steps are so small. Authoritarian hearts don't want to free us all. Oh, the lies they weave, so tangled and so bleak. Afraid of the change, of the justice we seek. Javier, you stand with our hearts that are vast and true, a beacon in the dark, guiding us through. So let them shout, let them rage against the light. Javier's our captain in this fight for what is right.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad and thankful to have you here. If you're a regular to the show, you know what to do. Beep, boop, beep, boop. Hit that like button. If it's your first time here watching the show today, make sure that you subscribe. Hit the follow button so you can join us on the regular. This show streams live every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We'd be glad to have you be a regular guest. You can also download the audio version of this podcast anywhere you get your mobile devices. All right. Everybody's excited. Apparently something big just happened down in Argentina, and I don't understand it yet. But God bless Aaron Sepulveda Quay and our friend Real Hunter Human, who's live in the Rumble chat. He is giving us updates on a voting process that is underway in Argentina for what I'm told is called a basis law. Apparently, it's supposed to undo hundreds of regulations in Argentina. It's a very exciting thing from what I'm hearing. I don't pretend to fully understand it. That's why I bring experts on my show. That's why I have so many awesome guests like Aaron Sepulveda, an economist who's going to join us to talk about that and many other things, as well as just my question, why do so many U.S. right-wingers hate Javier Milei? You might be like, well, that's odd, that's weird. And if you don't live on the internet, you might not even see it, but there's a lot. There's a lot. And I think that my friend Caleb Vanderfeld's probably nailed it when he said just a few minutes ago, it's because he's not an authoritarian like many of them are. Now, I know you're probably like, wait a minute, I'm a right-winger and I'm not an authoritarian. Well, then this isn't about you. It's about people like this anomaly character online and Jake Shields, this former UFC guy, who just cannot, for the life of them, say anything honest about Javier Milei. We're going to talk about that this morning at 7:30. It's going to be great. We already got $10 in the tip jar this morning from our friend Levin 214, who apparently likes us very much. Levin, what have we done to earn your love and your respect so much? Thank you very much for that. He is already trying to unlock today's bonus content. This week, the theme for the bonus content on the show that you can unlock is innovations that set us free. And yesterday we talked a little bit about how the innovation of washing machines has actually revolutionized life in across the world for people that have access to washing machines because of all the extra time that people have now, not having to go out down to the river and, beat their clothes dry. Will Run Riot is asking over on Rumble the real questions. He says, can we have Javier Milei too? I want Javier Milei. It's not fair. Will, we have Javier Milei at home.
From now on, it's going to be America first.
There's your Javier at
America
first. You know what I'm saying?
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Okay. You want to talk about that? As well as anti-Israel protesters taking over Columbia University's academic building in the latest campus chaos. A huge mob of masked anti-Israel protesters broke into an academic building at Columbia University and seized it early on Tuesday. This is hours before the school finally began suspending students who refused to vacate the tent encampment that brought campus life to a halt. Dozens have stormed into Hamilton Hall and sealed themselves in shortly before 1 a.m., with some using metal barricades, chairs, and tables to block others from getting inside. Footage from social media shows. I do have some of that footage as well. Oh, no, I don't actually. I didn't. Why is this always happen to me? Here we go. Where's my stinking stupid... I have no idea. Give me just 1 second, guys. Hold on. All right. I'll be right back.
In the heart of Buenos Aires, under silver skies, Javier's making waves, a truth in a storm of lies. They claim they love the market, but their words are just a game. For when freedom lights the fire, they just can't stand the flame. They say they hate tyranny, but just to disguise, 'cause they can't handle kindness or the truth behind your eyes. They talk a big talk, but their steps are so small. Authoritarian hearts don't want to free us all. Oh, the lies they weave, so tangled and so bleak. Afraid of the change, of the justice we seek. Javier, you stand with a heart so vast and true, a beacon in the dark, guiding us through.
All right, sorry about that, guys. I was just having a little bit of technical problems I had to fix. Looks like I've got it fixed. Here we have one of the protesters at Columbia University being interviewed. Take a listen.
So it sounds like you've been familiar with the issue of Palestine before October 7th. When did you first start learning about Palestine? And when was that?
Yeah, so not too much. I came up in the New York City public school system. I think it was in high school I had a teacher who, told us, my background, I'm black and white, so I grew up in a very more of like American-based, African diaspora conversations. So I think it was in high school we started talking about how Israel was given like the two-state and that sort of thing. And I had a teacher who was like, yeah, I don't think there can be much sympathy for their position now given the mass violence they've incited on the Palestinian people. And I think that was the first time an educator had ever said that. That was my junior year at a high school in the Bronx. And yeah, ever since, I grew up on Obama. I went to his inaugurations, big Democratic households, and I had no idea that he was responsible, dropped more drone bombs and whatnot on the Middle East than any president in history. I had no idea he was a terrorist. That was not.
Obama's a terrorist. I also got one thing right. Here we have video of the protesters barricading themselves in at Hamilton Hall in Columbia. They are using a bike lock to barricade the doors. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I noticed that some white boys decided they were going to take matters in their own hands and try and stop the protesters from getting in. Now, notice this old white woman with gray hair. She's going to come in. She's going to come into this story a little bit later. Watch this.
5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. Israel is a terrorist. They're trying to document them being assholes.
Trying to document them being assholes. So see this old gray lady right there, looks, with the cobweb vajayjay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Occupation no
You're right.
more.
They are being assholes.
No more. 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6,
So here we have a couple of well-meaning students, probably actually came to school that day to learn, who are trying to stop the protesters. Now, who is that lady right there, that beautiful young lady there? That's Lisa Fithian, and she's been caught on footage many times during this protest, giving students basically a breakdown on how to disrupt campus life. She is a far-left organizer. She's a professional, a member and coordinator of the Washington Peace Center, quote unquote, very peaceful as they're breaking those windows. Notice that we were subjected to thousands of hours of footage of January 6 protesters breaking windows at the U.S. Capitol. And when you see something like this, well, this is defended. This kind of behavior is defended by the Columbia University staff. Look at this. Here we have the faculty forming a human line against the police to prevent the removal of the protest encampments. You can see them all here wearing these orange vests. These are their professors that are preventing the police from breaking down the tent city that these students have erected on their campus. Now, who is this Lisa Fithian guy? So she's she's a coordinator for the Washington Peace Center. So she's a paid protester. She's sent in with donations. She uses money. Probably some of the money that goes to the Washington Peace Center is taxpayer dollars. So we're probably paying for this to some extent. And she's organized hundreds of events and demonstrations on a range of far-left issues. She's also provided training and support work to the United Auto Workers. She was involved in the violent Seattle protests in 1999. She also wrote she was an influential member of the national team of Extinction Rebellion. In 2019, she wrote the book Shut It Down, Stories from a Fierce Loving Resistance, giving advice on how to organize disruptive protests across the U.S. She's 63 years old, went to Skidmore College. Here she is, Lisa Fithian. So if you had any questions about whether or not these were paid professionals that were stirring up all of this violence on our college campuses around the country, there you have it right there. Here's Lisa Fithian. You can see her right there in this video where she's telling them how to commit acts of violence, how to break windows, how to barricade doors. Something that, how many people are sitting in federal prison right now for doing to the U.S. Capitol building? Remember, our taxpayer dollars pay for this, okay? Our taxpayer dollars go to these universities. So what should be done? And I'm hearing from a lot of different people, what should be done? People are asking the question, what should we do with these students? Some people are saying you need to send in the cops, they need to break this up and stuff like that. I am going to take a little bit of a different tack on this one. Here's what I'm going to say. This is my take on this one, okay? You ever see that movie Airplane when they're talking, everybody's showing the commentators and they're asking the questions, what do you think should be done to save the people and stuff? There's this one conservative commentator and he says, I say, let them crash. And you know what I say? I say, let them burn it all down to the ground. Like, let them just, you know what? Don't send in the police. They don't want the police there. Let them reap exactly what they have sown. I think you ought to pull police. So campus security, if you're a white person or a Jew on Columbia University campus, get out. Right? They've already canceled classes, in-person classes for the rest of the semester. There's no reason for you to be there. Just let them burn it to the ground. Just let them burn it to the ground. That's what they want to do. That's what they're going to destroy. It's a bunch of raging monkeys, throwing poo, throwing feces everywhere. Let them do it. I say let them crash. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open. You can text me anytime, night or day. 573-319-1586 is the text line. I want to hear your thoughts on this, as well as many other things. Forgot to tell you guys, today, of course, is Tuesday, which means what? That means that Camelia Peterson will be joining us live at 8 a.m. Central. Looking forward to that. And she's going to talk to us about this story that caught my attention yesterday. You guys know who Martin Freeman is, the guy who played Bilbo Baggins in the movie The Hobbit? Well, he's in this movie with Jenna Ortega. And Jenna Ortega is the chick who played Wednesday in that new Addams Family kind of spinoff called Wednesday. Well, Martin Freeman, who's 52 years old, is in a scene with Jenna Ortega. She's 21 years old in this movie called Miller's Girl. And there's this 30-year age gap between the two of them, but apparently they have a love scene in this movie. And the backlash to seeing the two of them that have this 30-year age gap online has been tremendous. The amount of hate that they're getting over this scene showing a 30-year age difference between a man and a woman in the scene has just been completely overblown. But of course, that's not what the internet is anyway. They're saying it's so gross. And you can find a lot of people, right-wingers, left-wingers, all across the spectrum, just agreeing with this, that there's this 30-year age gap and it's completely disgusting. That's one part of the story, which obviously I think you know where I'm going to go with that angle on it. But then there's another angle to this story, which is that there are these things on Hollywood sets now called intimacy coordinators. I'm so glad I got out of that business. Intimacy coordinators. They now have this whole process of consent that they have to go through when they're going through this scene together. I can't imagine what it must be like to be an actor and have to do a love scene, and even without some leftist puke whispering in your ear, like, now make sure that before you reach out and touch her hair, you got to say this, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's probably already nerve-wracking enough. But the fact that they hire some fat, woke, leftist turd to come in to these sets and to coach, and that it's only one way. that they're going to ask. They're watching the man like a hawk to make sure that he doesn't get his his nipples might get a little bit too hard. Oh my God. We don't want that, right? Did your nipple get hard and accidentally touch her face? Oh my God, did they have consent for that? No! Anyways, we're going to talk to Camelia Peterson about that this morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. It's going to be great and it's going to be fun. And make sure that you send in your texts at 573-319-1586. Again, that's 573-319-1586. I like how Bill Maher is reacting to many of these protests around the country.
And finally, new rule. Someone needs to tell the people who block traffic in the name of a cause, no one likes you. And you're probably hurting your cause. In case you haven't seen what's going on lately, activists for ending the war in Gaza have taken to gathering on roads and bridges and stopping commuters from crossing. It happened last week in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle. They also blocked traffic here on the 405, but no one noticed. What they did notice was this, that you have to be pretty dumb to think that the way to bring people around to your point of view is to make them late to pick up their kids from daycare. And that's what most normies are thinking. I have a kid. I have a job. And yes, I'm sure there are injustices on both sides in the Middle East, as there are injustices all over the world. But I'm going to be late for work, something you protesters on the bridge seem to have the luxury of not having to worry about, which seems kind of privilegey. You can glue your hands to the street because your hands don't have to do any work today. I'm not saying there aren't sincere passions about Gaza, especially among people from the region, but social justice warriors, for a lot of them it seems like it's more about the warrioring than about whatever the cause is. If you really cared about apartheid so much, which Israel does not actually practice, Arabs there vote, they serve in parliament, they sit on the judiciary, wouldn't you start with this? With the hundreds of millions of women in the world who live under a true apartheid agenda?
They don't care, Bill. This is the weird thing about this is that the left, while claiming to be for women's rights and equality, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I mean, they would usher this into the country, and they want this to come to the country. You think that they actually are standing up for women's rights, but you have to understand that Islam and Muslims, like, they are higher on the diversity pyramid than just women's rights are in general. That's why you see so many leftist white women advocating for these causes, because leftist white women believe that they have privilege. And because they believe that they have privilege, they will allow themselves to be subordinated to the Islamic culture because they are higher on the privilege pyramid, which means that they have to subordinate themselves to this culture because to them, culture is relative. No cultures are better than another. And therefore, since no cultures are better one than another, since we just can't understand their ways, we don't want to preach to them about how their values are. And therefore, if they wanted to bring those values here to the United States, well, man, that's just all fine and groovy. Who are we, privileged liberal white women, to tell them how to live their lives? Am I right? Can I get an amen? I think you all know what I'm saying here. Well, anyway, so Bill Maher is going to be, we're probably going to go back to this clip a little bit later on in the show. Let me get rid of this for just a moment. We're going to have a couple of great guests on the show today. Aaron Sepulveda Hue is going to join us here in about 5 minutes. I'm looking forward to hearing from him about what's happening in Argentina with our boy Javier Milei, and why do so many U.S. right-wingers hate Javier Milei? I mean, I have my own take on it. I think it's because he's nice to Jewish people. But there is so much dishonesty about what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina that we need an economist to come in and clean it up. For example, Yesterday, some right-wingers were claiming that Argentina's currency has exploded. That they were saying one of these characters was saying, "Oh, hey, what do you think of Javier Milei now? He seems like he's destroying his country, libertarians. He's destroyed his currency, and he did the U.S. Israel tour." Which, if they had just made a criticism of the economy without including the U.S. Israel thing in there, I might go, okay, well, you just didn't understand that actually inflation has gone down in Argentina since Javier Milei took over 3 or 4 months ago. Inflation was on the rise until then, but you could forgive people for just an economic misunderstanding. But that's not what's going on because they always have to include the whole Israel thing, which makes me think that maybe they're really upset at Javier Milei for another reason. Like, my little Nazi meter just goes off. I was talking to Jeremy Coffin about this yesterday. Maybe my alarm is a little bit too sensitized. Maybe I need to tone down like how sensitive it is because, people do fling around the words terms like racist and anti-Semite, I think, a little bit too loosely. But every once in a while, my Nazi alarm goes off. And I'm just like, wow, maybe, you know what? Maybe I just need to, tone the sensitivity down on it just a little bit. Or maybe I'm just being too sensitive or something. But every once in a while, it sounds like the stormtroopers are on the march a little bit. And maybe I'm off base here. Maybe I'm wrong. You know what? Let's get an economist in here to debunk some of the economic fallacies, and maybe he'll have an opinion about the latter thing as well. We just unlocked today's bonus content, you lucky boys and girls and non-binaries. Thank you very much to our buddy Fred. Fred stepped in this morning. He bought a couple of placemats with George Washington's face on them. Thank you for that, Fred. Everybody say thank you, Fred. What does that mean? That means that instead of having to watch commercials, you guys get to watch today's bonus content. The theme for this week's show for our mini documentaries is innovations that set us free. Yesterday's, we talked a little bit about all the joys of what were they? Not dishwashers, washing machines, and how they have set us free. Today, we're going to talk about another innovation that has set us free and changed humanity for the better from now until the end of time, at least until we run out of energy, which will happen if we don't build nuclear power plants. We'll talk about that when we get back. We're going to talk to Aaron Sepulveda-Quay on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Wake Up America Show bonus content on the innovations that set us free takes a look at the history of refrigeration. This technology may have single-handedly changed humanity away from hunting and gathering into what we are today. Refrigeration and air conditioning are indispensable in modern life, pivotal not only in our homes but also for crucial technologies such as computer servers, underscoring the necessity of cooling systems in contemporary society. The evolution of refrigeration and AC has been marked by significant contributions from various inventors and has profoundly shaped American life, raising the question of how these technologies came to be. Our journey into the history of cooling begins with ancient civilizations in the Middle East and South Asia, where the need for cooling was met with ingenious solutions. You could say that the ancient Egyptians invented the first window unit. They didn't have electricity or the boxy units we use today, though. Instead, they would hang wet reeds on their windows. The water on the reeds would absorb heat from the warm wind, and cool air would enter the building. We've also used refrigeration much longer than you probably expected. The people of ancient Persia and India used to make their own ice. They did it by merely leaving trays of boiled water out at night. Heat leaves the earth through the atmosphere, especially at night when the sun can't add more heat. That's why you may have frost on your roof or car even though it's not freezing outside. The water would freeze due to heat loss. Modern refrigeration and AC, however, involve mechanical processes rather than these primitive methods, signaling a shift towards more controlled environmental cooling. This shift owes much to pioneers like Benjamin Franklin, who in 1758 discovered that evaporating alcohol could cool an environment, a principle that later influenced modern refrigerant development. In his words, evaporating alcohol could bring about the possibility of freezing a man to death on a warm summer's day. That discovery did not immediately lead to inventions, but it came back later. About 170 years later, it led to the development of Freon in 1928. Further contributions came from scientists like William Cullen, Robert Faraday, and Jacob Perkins, with Perkins patenting the first vapor compression refrigeration cycle in 1835, although it wasn't widely adopted at the time. In Florida, physician John Gorey developed a mechanical ice machine to help treat patients by cooling their environments, believing it would aid in treating diseases like malaria and yellow fever. Despite the initial local success of Gorey's ice machine, a series of misfortunes, including the death of his main investor, led to financial ruin and his eventual death in obscurity, though he was later recognized for his contributions. Refrigeration took on a critical role in national affairs during President James A. Garfield's presidency, where an improvised cooling system was used in an attempt to treat his gunshot wounds. When he arrived at the White House, naval engineers quickly rigged a cooling system to promote healing. It was quite simple, consisting of a fan that blew over fabric moistened with blocks of ice and ice water. Medical personnel believed that cooler temperatures would stop infections. They were onto something, but it wasn't enough to save Garfield. Despite their efforts, Garfield died 79 days later. The commercial and technological potential of refrigeration was significantly advanced by Willis Carrier in the early 20th century, who developed an air conditioning system that could cool large spaces efficiently. Carrier's innovations led to widespread public and commercial acceptance of air conditioning, particularly as buildings began to advertise summertime cooling as a luxury. By the 1950s, AC and refrigeration became commonplace in American households, influencing the development of cities and the preservation of food and medicine. Today, these technologies not only provide comfort but support advanced fields like computer science and medicine, though they also pose environmental challenges. Current research in refrigeration technology focuses on reducing environmental impacts through innovative methods, such as solid-state and magnetic-based cooling. The history of refrigeration shows a progression from simple, natural cooling methods to sophisticated technologies that have become integral to modern life, with a future that promises further innovations and environmental considerations. Almost no other technology has made life so much more livable and allowed for human flourishing and freedom than the technology of refrigeration.
In the heart of Buenos Aires, under silver skies, Javier's making waves, a truth in a storm of lies. They claim they love the market, but their words are just a game. For when freedom lights the fire, they just can't stand the flame. They say they hate tyranny, but just to disguise, cause they can't handle kindness or the truth behind your eyes. They talk a big talk, but their steps are so small. Authoritarian hearts don't want to free us all. Oh, the lies they weave, so tangled and so bleak, afraid of the change, of the justice we seek. Javier, you stand with a heart so vast and true, a beacon in the dark, guiding us through. So let them shout, let them rage against the light. Javier's our captain in this fight for what is right. Free markets.
Good morning. Thanks for waiting. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Hope you're enjoying the bonus content this week, innovations that set us free. I saw that our friend Frickety over in the chat says, I like APs featuring inventions we all take for granted. Sometimes modern people don't appreciate our creativity and innovation. Humans are incredible. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yesterday when we were talking about the washing machine and you watched that little mini documentary that I produced about how it has set women free all over the world, you don't understand just how much of a backlash there was when people started doing the econometrics on that. Well, those conversations are difficult and sometimes they're gendered, so that makes the conversations, even more volatile. Well, and when it comes to questions of international politics or things like what's happening in Argentina. We can't just have a conversation about what's happening to their currency down there as a case study for whether or not freedom actually works. No, we got to drag the whole Jew thing into it, right? We can't just say, oh, okay, well, let's look at the inflation rate in Argentina. Oh, okay, well, then let's compare it to what's happening to their currency. No. It has to be about the Jews. As a matter of fact, yesterday when I saw this post by this legendary energy guy online, he says Javier Milei of Argentina purposely, by the way, not on accident, purposely imploded his currency and then did the America-Israel tour. Oh my God, no, not the America-Israel tour.
No, God, please,
he says, libertarians, are you sure this guy isn't trying to screw his people over? You know what? I don't know diddly about economics, so that's why I bring the experts in to educate me on these things. Aaron Sepulveda is joining us live right now from Texas. Good morning, Aaron. How are you doing today, brother? What are you drinking there?
Yerba mate, Canarias, Messi's. Yerba mate.
Messi's yerba mate. Well, we love to see it. I got to admit, ever since I had my first cup of yerba mate about a month ago, I'm hooked. I love it. It's delicious. And I highly recommend, if anybody out there is a big fan of like green teas or anything like that, it's kind of like that, a little bit more smoky, a little bit more earthy, but I think it's delicious. And it's got a lot of caffeine because, you know, we libertarians love drugs, don't we, Aaron?
Okay. Sir, I wasn't waiting for that one, sir. I'm sorry. You left me without words for the first time. Second time in history.
All right. Well, did Javier Milei purposely implode his currency, Aaron?
No, not at all. Now, to be fair with the guy, what's the name of the guy? Anomaly or something?
Anomaly.
Yeah, he invited some libertarians that are more friendly to Milei, and he did he started asking, because this was my concern with a lot of right wingers. I don't mind them criticizing Milei. Milei's not perfect or anything like that. It is you said it really well, and honestly, sick and tired of as soon as like, hey, what's going on with this? Oh yeah, Jewish. Oh, Israel.
It's the Jew thing. It's the Jew thing.
I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, can we have those meaningful discussions about what this is crazy? Actually, I told some of my friends when I saw in their own pages, when I saw people just going randomly, oh yeah, but something about Zionism or Israel, whatever. So can you just block these people? I really don't want to listen. I don't want to literally, my eyes, I need to protect them from nonsense. It's just literally, you can get initially an overload of nonsense that can actually affect the way you see that you respond for life. So actually for the whole audience, if you see someone crazy online, block them immediately. You don't need any of that garbage in your life. We have countries to fix. We have problems to solve. People have real life problems, and that's what we're trying to do. And it's gonna have some trade-offs and opportunity costs that we're going to have to face. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. We're going to have to live with that. And if you guys at all ever want me to talk about my differences with Milei, we can discuss them openly, but I promise you, I'm not going to go to like, and this same for libertarians. Oh, everything is the government's fault, or everything is the use or whatever. No, let's discuss the details. What's possible, what's not possible, because not everything we like is possible.
That's true. It's true. Politics is the art of the possible. All right. So let's segment off the whole Jew thing. We'll put the Jews over there in the corner for now, and they can just listen while we have a conversation about economics, specifically Jewish economics, aka libertarianism. Just kidding. Well, it is kind of the libertarians did start our economics, which might explain why there's some hatred towards libertarians from many right-wing authoritarians. But I digress. So on the implode his currency accusation, did Javier Milei purposely implode his currency?
Not at all. This is the problem, and I think we kind of discussed this stuff before, is the former administrations, right? All the way from Peronist, and if you want to see, Peronist will be, imagine, old school Democrats. Some of them are somewhat conservatives. Some of them are more left-wingers, but just imagine Argentina. Imagine if California gets its own currency and starts doing all the policies that usually go crazy. That's what Milei is trying to fix. Last time we said he's kind of trying to move California a little bit more to look a little more like Texas. That's what they're trying to do in Argentina. One of the biggest problems that you have in Argentina is that sometimes they do subsidies that are like completely incoherent for regular humans outside of Argentina. And Argentinians will tell you this. One of the hilarious ones, which to a degree, sometimes they put taxes on imports, which makes things go up in price. And in order to compensate for that, then they start taxing their exports so that some goods don't get out, and that kind of controls that. But then those distinctions start making the currency of the country cheaper will be it ends up devaluing them, the devaluing, and they don't get enough dollars so they can actually make the payments and so on and so forth. It gets super complicated. It got to the point that the government will control like 5 different rates between the dollar and the peso, and it was illegal for you to do it outside. Most people do it outside of the law because the laws are crazy. But for example, there was before Milei came along, the street, let's call it blue dollar informal rate or street rate, like the one that people use, was 1,000 pesos to $1. But the government was actually, the official rate was 400, sometimes even 300 to 1, or 400 to 1. For some imports and exports transactions that were very small relative to the whole thing, but that differential was paid by taxpayers. This is what people need to understand. This is how crazy it was. Taxpayers were making that differential, and therefore Milei comes along and says, "This is madness. We need to stop it. I'm gonna start to move in." And he didn't do it right away, which is kind of interesting. He said, "Well, what if you do it too fast and it causes problems?" But little by little, he's been getting closer. And for all intents and purposes, he has already put it 1-to-1. That's why it looks like he went from, let's say, 400 to 800, which looks like a devaluation half by himself. Yeah, but because the rate was already devalued in the streets, like the real market rate was, so he had to actually catch up to say, we government, we cannot be spending that difference just to make it look like the exchange rate is 400 to 1, when in reality is 1,000 to 1. So when he gets rid of that,
there's an actual exchange rate, which is what it actually transacts the peso on the black market, where people are actually going in and buying and selling pesos. And then there's what the government reports the exchange rate is. So there's the reality, and then there is the fantasy. And so I think that the misunderstanding that many people have is that they're taking and looking at the actual exchange rate versus the government exchange rate versus the actual exchange rate. Mighty Megatron over in the Rumble chat says, I tried to send someone a gift via mail and the regular mail, and the government over there opens it and puts an import price based on what they think it's worth. Insane. So it's not even worth sending people a gift because the person receiving it has to pay a fee.
Yeah, that this is the kind of stuff. For example, they used to do this in Venezuela. Some of the things Bitcoin was helpful was you would actually buy something, let's say from Venezuela, right? And you would bring it from outside, from outside of Venezuela. When you report the price, it was half of the price, so they tax that price, okay? And then the other difference, you send it through Bitcoin, so nobody notices, right? But then obviously Argentine Peronists and Kirchneristas figured out that they were doing it in Venezuela. So now it's like, no, I'm gonna be the one saying what's the actual price, and you're gonna pay the tax on the gift for the price that I say. These are the stuff that Milei is dealing with.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I had to
Austin,
send a yeah. Go ahead.
If you don't mind me,
go on.
Think about the things that Milei is facing right now, and a lot of U.S. libertarians think that Argentine's priorities are supposed to be foreign policy from the point of view of an American libertarian.
I know.
Seriously, guys, it's just a completely different universe.
Well, listen, they've got stars of David in their eyes, and they can't see anything else, Aaron. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's continue along down this economic path here. I think I understand a little bit about the economic misunderstandings here, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding things completely. An hour ago, someone posted a chart from Bloomberg saying that the Argentine peso was the world's best currency in the last 3 months. So in terms of the value of the peso, it has skyrocketed compared to like the Kenyan shilling, the Uruguayan peso. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Some people are saying this is a good thing. I don't quite understand it. Please help me understand. Okay, explain it to me like I'm 5.
Since the Argentine government right now is not overspending because Milei has balanced the budget. Therefore, they don't have to create extra money to pay for that extra spending. Any bureaucrat that was working for the Argentine government now has to go and actually produce goods and services that people actually want, pushing down inflation, which is working, by the way. Therefore, since they're not creating new ones, every other currency continues to create new units and increase spending. Therefore, that currency starts devaluing little by little, not the Argentine peso, because the government that creates it is not creating any extra anymore, and it's not spending it. So it's like the double. It doesn't create it because it doesn't spend it. So it doesn't push up prices, and it doesn't dilute the quantity. So this is what is supposed to be done. If you ask me personally, Milei is taking longer than he should, but obviously I don't know all the details on the ground, so I can't get too picky about it. But he's doing the right thing. The market is expecting that all those pesos are going to become dollars at some point. So most of the market is actually pricing them as if they were already dollars, and it revolves around 1,000. It's always going up and down from 1,000 pesos to $1, but everyone's taking it like that in the free market. It's telling you that the expectation is that those pesos are going to be worth like dollars at some point, because that's what he has been promising. And since he fulfilled his mandate to balance the budget, immediately you can say like, yeah, this is for real. This is going to happen. What's the problem is that it takes time, and we're in a social media era, and we want everything.
We want now. Yes. I have a chart up on the screen right now while we're talking, Aaron, that shows monthly inflation. And it is a comparison of what their CPI was in Argentina from the Kirchneristas when they were in control to when Milei took over. On the left hand of this chart shows the months of the previous year from January of 2023 to December of 2023. Javier Milei officially took over in January of this year. He's been officially in charge of the economy to a degree for 3 months. And the Kirchneristas, especially when it looked like they were about to lose power, they inflated the hell out of that currency. I mean, 25.5 points inflation. And the last 3 months, monthly inflation under Milei has been going down from 20 points to 13 points to 11 points. So I guess people have been just picking and choosing selectively the information that they've decided to show, to point to, in order to denigrate what Milei has, the incredible things he's been able to accomplish in just a short time.
This is the issue, for example, and this happens. This is Steve Hanke, or Hanke, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Steve
Hanke, an economist that pretty much every libertarian economist admires, because he has done great work on dollarization. He knows really well what to do when it comes to dollarization. Now, he's not the holder of absolute truth or anything like that, but he knows what he's talking about. It looks like the guy got mad at Milei for not dollarizing super right away. But I usually say, well, do you understand that in Argentina, it's just very different than any other country, so you have to be careful with that. So he, and strangely enough, hardcore leftists that hate Milei have imposed inflation rates year over year, the 12-month, when Milei was not in power. And actually, this is something that the audience hopefully appreciate. Without being concerned with who is in power, in the US in 2022, when inflation started to come down, I was one of the first ones to say we cannot look year-to-year inflation, because what really matters is what happens month to month, because it tells you where we're going, right? So yeah, sure, the inflation in 2021 to 2022, 12 months, was really high. But by the middle of 2022, inflation was already either 1%, 2%. It was significant. And I was saying, guys, we cannot look year to year, because what really matters is we're going forward. What is the one that is telling you going forward? The last month or the last 3 months that cannot tell you where things are going. And that's Biden in power. So a lot of people say, oh, you're just siding with Biden. I said, no. I'm just talking about economics. Here, now on the other side in Argentina, it's exactly the same thing. The question is not year to year when Milei wasn't even in power. The question is the last month or the last 2 or 3 months tell us where we're going. Where are we going? up or down? We're going down. That's what matters. And then as inflation is going down, wages catch up finally in dollars. That's the important thing. And now Argentines are gonna earn in dollars, like Ecuadorian low-income people in Ecuador love the dollar because it's better than the local currency. People in El Salvador love the dollar because it's better than the currency they had. It takes some time for the wages to catch up, but the way they're going to catch up faster is the fact that inflation is going down. That's the one that matters.
My brain is starting to explode here. This is so much information, and it's very early in the morning for most people here. So let me just give them take a deep breath real quick.
Okay.
And let me reset for our audience, because some people might just now be tuning in live, wondering what we're talking about. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching the Wake Up America show, and I'm speaking to Aaron Sepulveda. He is an economist from Texas who's talking to us a little bit about some of the misunderstandings about what's happening to the economy of Argentina. Now, some of you might be asking, Austin, why are you so focused on the minutia of what's happening in Argentina? Well, my response to that is that this might be the greatest experiment in libertarian ideas in all of human history, save perhaps the American experiment. But here, even in the United States, we haven't abolished the deep state. We're not cutting regulation and spending and taxes and doing things like that here in the United States. Our government is growing. They're actually implementing libertarian and conservative economic and social ideals in their country. Remember, Javier Milei is pro-life. He's not just a social libertarian on some of the things that conservatives might be like, oh, I don't know about this. He's a libertarian. What does that mean? Well, he loves babies. He doesn't want to kill babies. And he understands economics, and he's also pro-US and pro-Israel, which is apparently for some people a bad thing. All right, let's sidestep this conversation now to that foreign policy question, Aaron, because one of the things that people always seem to mention whenever they're criticizing Javier Milei is they'll cite some fake statistics about the inflation numbers or the value of the Argentine peso or what have you. And then they get bodied on that. So then they fall back to this other position, which is to say that Javier Milei, he's at the Wailing Wall, and he's all these things. Now, I know you've said this before, that it's like, well, Argentina has no foreign policy power, but that doesn't change the principle of the thing. I mean, the eyes of the world are all centered on what's happening between Israel and Gaza at this moment. You've got students at Columbia University who have barricaded themselves into this building in Hamilton Hall in New York. Protests have sparked all across the entire country. Everybody is looking at this conflict between Israel and Gaza, and where you stand on that issue is going to impact how people see you, how people feel about you. Now, I'll tell you this. I find it very strange, Aaron, that some of the most quote unquote pro-West people, especially here in the United States, seem to be the ones who are tearing down the West or the countries that share the cultural values of the West the most, which I find quite ironic. But still, Javier Milei is pro-West, he's pro-US, and he's pro-Israel, which makes him an enemy of certain political factions, but none more so than apparently American right-wingers, and therefore many American libertarians as well. Talk to us about your thoughts on this phenomenon, but don't just say, oh, well, he doesn't have any power to do anything. That doesn't change the principle of the thing, Aaron. So talk to me about the principle of the thing.
The context of Latin America, it's very different okay, let's put it this way. And that's why I'm gonna try to talk about principle, but it's difficult for me because in Latin America, to discuss foreign policy is a luxury. What are your priority, foreign policy or to poverty? What's your priority going on there? Since obviously we have to give priority to poverty, foreign policy principles are not terribly developed even by libertarian practice, let's say, on a daily basis. Our daily conversations usually have to do with inflation, poverty, even things like drugs that usually that one also, by the way, you guys know it is a luxury because it's like, oh yeah, we weren't about drugs or about poverty. What do we give priority to, and so on and so forth. Now, the strategy that I've seen from Milei, I'm not completely sure about principles. In his personal life, as far as I understand, he has a very close connection to the Jewish people, and to the point that I think at least he learns from Jewish people. So he's going to be getting really close, independent of the state of Israel. He's very close to Jewish people now. So there's some bias, if you wish, or some starting point right there. But from the typical, let's say, libertarian or right winger in Argentina, which is pretty much in Latin America, the same thing. We have two options. These are the principles of foreign policy in Latin America. You are either Maduro and your people are starving, or you are pro-US. We don't have this
What does
fancy.
that mean, Aaron? You're either Maduro and your people are starving, or you're pro-US. Explain that.
In Latin America, the left, this is going to affect a lot of people. The left is nationalist. The right, for the majority, tends to be called, we will be internationalists, like open to the world and all that kind of stuff. Okay, therefore, the left in the US, I'm sorry, in Latin America in general, doesn't matter which country, they're very pro-Cuba. Cuba is a key ideological country that influences your positions on almost everything.
Really?
So, Cuba, that's the key. Cuba, and then, for whatever the reason is, the, let's call it image, or the, I don't know how, the image of the left move a little bit away from Cuba, because obviously it was a complete failure. And they moved to Venezuela, which then later on it became a complete failure also. So and Cuba and Maduro or Chavez, they're anti-US. So for international politics, most Latin Americans that spend 90 to 99% of their time concerned with poverty and yerba mate, if you wish. Those are the things that we're concerned about. When we look at international politics, for the most part, is okay. So you are either Maduro and you take that international political stand, and therefore your people are going to starve, because that's what's happening in Cuba and that's what happened in Venezuela. Or you're pro-US, and whatever US does, doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat or whatever, we're just so far away that it makes almost no difference. Okay, therefore the principles in Latin America, they're super simple. You either side with the left, that is nationalist, if you wish, not pro-West per se, more pro-China. Actually, you can even say that, or you are more free market. Now, obviously, I'm not saying completely free market, but a little more free market, and you're pro-US. So in Latin America, it's incredibly simple, just by the fact that we don't have the time to go depth into the principles and non-intervention. Like, I personally am very strong. Like, this is just my position. I don't think the US should have any bases outside of the United States. That's my position, my personal position. I understand that that's not possible as of now, but not one libertarian in all Latin America would have the time to come to the conclusion that I come, because I live in the United States. I have I have a mixed concerns, but it also helps the fact that I live in the United States, that I don't have to worry so much about the things that typical libertarian day-to-day has to worry about in Argentina, in Venezuela, so on and so forth.
So I think I understand better the South American view of foreign policy, and why, that Javier Milei may be taking this stance based on those political situations here. But then in the United States, we have this very strange phenomenon of people who are pro-West and anti-Israel and anti-US, which I find to be fascinating. Maybe we're not going to have time, unfortunately, to get into the nitty-gritty details of that, Aaron. I've got to get to a break so I can get my next guest on, but I want to give you a chance to plug anything that you'd like, or give you a final statement before we go to a break to go get my next guest.
The closing, when it comes to economics, things are working in Argentina. They're getting better. I think much faster than what was promised. The timing is 2 years. The things have to get better. I think that's more than necessary, but out of caution, it was proper for Milei to say, hey, it's going to take about 2 years. Inflation is coming down very heavily, and then wages little by little start going up. So things are working. He's lower on the dollarization than what I would like, but I'm not there. So they know better than me.
Aaron, where can people follow you online?
Oh yeah, and follow me on Twitter, Aaron Sepulveda, Aaron Sepulveda C. Whatever questions you guys have about economics and Argentine, Latin American politics, feel free to ask me. I usually I try to be very good. And if not, some of my followers from Argentina will be happy to explain to you absolutely every detail about Argentina. They like that a lot.
Yes, they do, actually. Every time I mention them down there, I get all kinds of flurry of responses and retweets. But I'm glad to see that things are going well for the Argentine people, and I think it probably portends good things here in the United States if we follow Argentina's example. Never thought I would ever say something like that, but I'm jealous of Argentina. Aaron?
And drink yerba mate.
And enjoy yerba mate. It's delicious. Aaron, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time and for your insight on this one. We'll have you back on the show again real soon. Have a great day.
Blessings.
There you go. That's Aaron Sepulveda. What'd you guys think? All right. Well, make sure you give him a follow. I got to go to a brief break. We're going to talk to Camellia Peterson. All right. If there's a 30-year age gap between a man and a woman, and the man's older and the woman's younger, he is disgusting and a creep. But if you reverse it, then she's, I don't know, what do you call it, a cougar? We'll talk about that with Camellia. I'm pretty sure she's already blushing when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
The Cantina crew, this is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone and call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? that you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. Austin Peterson here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Well, as you all know, I've been eagerly anticipating the drop of our brand new sponsor for the Wake Up America show, and I am delighted to announce that Preserve Gold has stepped in to sponsor us in a big way. They love the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty that we espouse on our show. They reached out to me when they saw the live stream on rumble.com and said that we think that Austin Peterson and the Wake Up America show is a great product to invest in. And we'd love to be able to have an opportunity to let your audience, Austin, know about all of the value that we can bring to our potential customers. And I said to them, this is a fantastic opportunity. I've got a lot of terrific people that would love to hear about what you guys are doing over there to help people to secure their financial freedom. If central bank digital currencies do come to the United States, you're going to want to have gold as a cornerstone of your portfolio. I saw yesterday that a bill passed out of the Senate, hasn't gone to the governor's desk yesterday, to allow more people to transact with gold and silver here in the state of Missouri. I can imagine that for those of you who already own gold and silver like myself, you're definitely hoping that something like that passes, because not only has gold and silver been increasing in value over the last year, but we can expect that if laws like that continue to be passed, and if the Federal Reserve continues to move forward with central bank digital currency plans, that it's only going to get more valuable over time. I've secured my financial future with gold. You can do the same thing as well. Our partners at Preserve Gold want to hear from you. You can get a free gold and silver investment kit. There's no obligation to buy. Just send them a text message to the number 50505 with the word Liberty. That's 50505. Text them the word Liberty, and they will send you back all the information that you need to download a gold and silver information packet. Now, Preserve Gold is eager to hear from you, so make sure that you open up your phones right now, put that number in, 50505. Find out how to not only secure your family's financial future and to protect yourself against future inflation, but also is a great way to invest in liberty. Because as the Wake Up America shows, boats continue to rise. People like my next guest, Camelia Peterson, you'll be hearing from a lot more. Joining us now live on the show is our good friend, CJ Peterson. How you doing, Camelia?
I'm well, thank you. I'm excited for the new sponsor.
Yeah, thanks. Me
that
too.
That is something I need to learn more about.
Yeah, no, for sure. The cool thing about Preserve Gold is that they found us. Like, they saw us over at Rumble, and it's been kind of like about 30 to 40 days that we've been talking a little bit about the best way to approach our audience with their offerings. But if Preserve Gold continues to sponsor the Wake Up America show from now into the future, we're going to see a lot of incredible changes around here. So I think that for the audience, especially the really strong supporters who I know are already into gold, they can be sure that not only are they going to get something for themselves to take care of themselves in the future, but they're also investing in the future of liberty and media. So thank you very much for bringing that up, by the way, Camelia. I want to talk to you. You're a rural gal. You live out in the woods in Southwest Missouri. What did you think about this story of Kristi Noem, potential vice presidential pick for Donald Trump, taking her dog out into a gravel pit and blasting it in the face because it killed some chickens?
I mean, there's a couple of sides to this, right? I mean, my first thought was like, why would you dedicate that much space in a memoir to an incident like that? I mean, I haven't read it, so I don't know the context, but it seems odd. And it sounds bad because, you were talking about, it's probably on yesterday's show, about whether or not the dog was actually a puppy at 14 months old. And I would say it depends on the breed, because there are definitely a lot of dogs who are still in their puppy phase at that point. And so but I think the point that a lot of people have brought up is a fair one, is that it didn't sound like she trained the dog very well. It's also true that some dogs, are just not going to get it. And once a dog, and it's also true because I've had chickens as well, and have had neighbor dogs that have decimated my flock. And it's true that once a dog kind of gets a taste for that, it's very hard to break them of it. It is possible, though, but I would think, if it happens one time, to me, that's not enough justification to, just go shoot the dog. I mean, I will say, growing up, we had a dog that my dad told me got lead poisoning. And I eventually figured out what that was. But this was a dog that had started to nip at people's heels and has started to bite. And it was given several chances, but once an animal starts doing that, it is difficult. And so sometimes you do have to make that call. But for me, it just sounds like she did not handle it well.
Sound like she went. Yeah, it sounded like she didn't go through the rigmarole that you would go through in order to try and teach the dog new tricks. I mean, if it's 14 months old, that's a dog that could still learn new tricks. Now, with Calvin, for example, our French bulldog, he had a negative incident with a pit bull when he was young, and now he's very reactive with other dogs. You saw him with George. He was trying to kill him, right? And we didn't shoot Calvin. We didn't try and rehome him. I know a lot of people are kind of like, nah, we'll just give him to somebody else. But we did have to take some drastic measures. I didn't beat him, but I put a shock collar on him. And when he tried to attack George, he would get a little shock. Now, I thought it was fair. I thought it was only fair that if I was going to do that to him, that I did it to myself. And I did. And it hurts. But too bad. They're dogs. I didn't kill him. But if he ever acts up or acts violent towards other dogs, not people, then I give him the shock. Now, people is a different matter. If you're violent or reactive towards people, if they ever get loose and they might harm a child, it's a completely different story here.
Right.
Christy Noam tried to make it out as if the dog was kind of snapping at her as well, but she didn't really explain it all that well. I mean, this is kind of a disaster for her, isn't it?
For sure. Well, and the fact that she threw in there that she hated that dog, I mean,
yeah.
And that makes it sound even worse. And why throw in the story about the goat? Maybe I need to read this section to understand what the heck is going on here, because I mean, yes, it sounds like she had a billy goat.
Dirty, stinky goat, she said, that she didn't like. Have you ever?
And that's
have you ever had a goat that smelled good? I mean, for God's sake.
No, well, I heard you say that, and I was like, I can't. I was listening to it later, so I was like, I can't talk back because I grew up. We raised goats. I milked goats growing up, and so I will tell you that baby goats are some of the cutest animals on the earth. And
they smell bad.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Only billy goats smell bad, but otherwise goats are great. You just don't want to we never kept billy goats around because they are disgusting.
So the female goats, they don't stink. They're not as bad as the male goats.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the male goats won't if you castrate them. But.
There you go. Okay. Good to know. Well, there's Camellia Peterson and her farm living Green Acres over here. So, people don't take kindly to people who kill dogs. I mean, here's what I think, and maybe you heard me say this yesterday, but I think she might be lying. I think she kind of it's possible that she just kind of wants to sound tough around the boys. Have you seen this phenomenon in chicks that are running for office where they're kind of trying to pretend like they're can compete with the boys, so they act macho? I mean, there is at least a non-zero chance that this is all BS.
Sure. At the very least, perhaps exaggerated. And I guess my question is I'm not saying that she didn't, because some women do, but did she do it herself? Did she really do it? Or did her husband or somebody else do it? I mean, maybe she does wear the pants in the family, but I know I can say that that is not, I don't think that's something that I could do. Like I've had to bury a dog by myself, but I could not. That was after the vet took care of things, but I could
So
not do
the
that.
dog with lead poisoning, you didn't shoot it, you took it to the vet.
No, that was not me. That was when I was a kid. So that was my dad. And I'm sure that my dad did do it. And you were talking about, whether or not, you do that yourself or you go pay to have somebody do it. And I think that that's a good judgment call because, when I had to, the last dog I had to have put to sleep because he was so sick beyond help that I just could not have done that. So for me, and I had nobody else that could do it. So for me, it was worth that to go have it done humanely at a vet. But we've certainly we've had chickens that we've had to put down because of different things, and you do it yourself.
Yeah. Now, what's fascinating is that so few people have in this conversation have brought up Of Mice and Men. I've seen a few people mention John Steinbeck, the classic American novel, where the whole point of the movie or of the book seems to be that you should never let another man shoot your dog. And at the end of the book, the mentally retarded character is killed by his best friend, Curly, who shoots him because Curly has harmed and killed a human woman. Now, there's this other, side story that's the metaphor, where is this old man where his dog is old and stinky and no good to him anymore, and he lets somebody else shoot his dog, and his whole outpouring of emotion is over, I should have never let him do that to my dog. I should have never let somebody else do it. I mean, the lesson there is kind of do your own dirty work, I think, to an extent.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I think that, and especially when you're talking about, growing up on a farm and the realities of rural life, that is, Christy Noam talked about this a little bit, and she is right in that aspect, is that this is just, it's a part of life. It's a part of farm life, rural life, that you do have to take care of things like that once in a while. And I just remember growing up, my dad talked about this a lot, because you mentioned yesterday about how that we have kind of elevated dogs to this weird level in society to where they're almost more important than humans. And I grew up and my dad was like, dogs are farm animals, and, animals are animals and people are people, and you don't put them on the same level. And so I do have that perspective. And so I understand that. But I'm also a soft-hearted woman.
Well, no, I'm a soft-hearted guy. I don't like seeing animals hurt, but there have been times in my life when I've had to kill. And I think, if I were to have a son rather than a daughter, I would make sure to take him on at least one hunting trip where he would have to experience the circle of life and understand where his food comes from. One of the most painful experiences I've ever had was after I had shot a deer and wounded it, and I hadn't shot it clean. I had to end its life and cut its throat and and bleed it out so that it would actually die. And watching it in that moment when it was suffering and dying in the last couple of minutes of its life was a profound moment that made me consider, when I eat meat, when I am engaging in this process, this is ultimately what it is that I am doing. But I'm having someone else do it for me. But there's this ick factor that most people have anymore. Like they don't know where their food comes from. They don't understand the process that, a cow goes through this life cycle. And sometimes it doesn't even live to adulthood. If you eat veal, for example, you're talking about babies. But whether let's say if Christine, let's say that I'm giving the most generous example of what Christine Noam has explained. Let's say that what she had done was defensible. Let's say the dog had killed chickens, the dog was untrainable, the dog had snapped at humans, and it had to be put down. That is rural lifestyle for a lot of people. Not everybody has the time or the money or the energy or has the soft heart that's necessary to take something to a vet. I mean, that is rural life to some extent, is it not?
Agreed, for sure. And when you talk about, where your food comes from and, exposing somebody to, the fact that you are taking that life to feed yours. I think that brings up the importance that so many people who do those things on a regular basis, why it's so important to them that they do it in the most humane way possible, because there are ways that, that can be, immediate or as painless as possible or as quick as possible, because it's not something to disrespect. We should respect that, another living creature is giving up its life for our sustenance. And I think that is important in that process. But I do think that it's important for people to be exposed to it too. I know I've told you before that one of my things that maybe in my retirement I'll start is I think that boys and girls alike should be raised to be able to go from the barnyard to the ballroom. And I would love for kids to not only be exposed to the niceties of society and how to conduct themselves in a social setting and in a formal setting, but they also should be exposed to, hands-on dirty work, realities of life, and rural, things like this. There's a lot of city kids who never get exposed to those sort of things. And I think a program that would, give kids a taste of both of those things, I think would be great, because that's what makes us well-rounded individuals with the ability to empathize.
This is a good conversation. I'm speaking to Camellia Peterson on the Wake Up America show right now. We're live discussing a little bit about Kristi Noem and her story about her shooting a dog. Do you think this ends her VP chances?
I can't imagine that it doesn't. It has to. It's like the memes have been great. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, Donald Trump doesn't like dogs either. I don't. He's never killed a dog, but he's a New Yorker, right? So it's like, not the kind of thing that you do. But I mean, he may not care about things like, he certainly doesn't care about how his audience feels about vaccines. Have you been seeing him going after RFK lately?
A little bit. And here's the thing is that Kristi Noem's, like, the backlash has not just been from the left, like it's been from the right too. And so, but Trump doesn't need to give the left, especially, any more ammunition to come after him with. So I'm not sure she's a good choice.
Well, it's a shame because she didn't have too bad of a record as governor and as a legislator. But so ho hum, we're not going to have a hot VP. That's what my article this week I'm working on for Human Events Today is all about. Camellia, let's talk about something else. This story caught my attention yesterday, and I thought to myself, perfect for Camellia. How can I embarrass her to the max? This is a story about two actors. I know people are like, oh God. Martin Freeman, he was the star of the not the Lord of the Rings, but The Hobbit. He played Frodo Baggins. And Jenna Ortega, she played a leading role in the movie or the TV series based on Addams Family. And they've got like a 30-year age difference between the two of them. And people are extremely grossed out by it. I think it's a good conversation because it's not just this incident, but you see it all over social media. Whenever there's a big age difference between a man and a woman, people are always really grossed out by it. Are you grossed out by it if there's a 30-year age difference between someone?
I'm not grossed out by it. I do think it's an outlier. And I do think that it probably speaks to some issues and is probably not sustainable. So I guess it all depends on what you're looking for in a relationship.
Is it an issue that men are attracted to young, beautiful, fertile women that can bring them children? Is that an issue? They have issues. They have issues. Men have issues for following their biological imperatives.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's an issue, but I do think that at this point, like, men have to manage their expectations.
Okay.
And our biological, we talk a lot about, our biological imperatives and the reasons why, the evolutionary reasons behind why we do things. And, my stance is that those things are all useful in informing us about our behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should dictate our behavior or excuse our behavior, because we could excuse a lot of things, right?
Why not? Are young girls, girls who are between like the ages of 18 to 25, which is, typically when they're at their most beautiful, typically, not always, but are they stupid? Are they dumb? Are they easily misled? Young women, it's just strange because
It depends.
it depends, right? It does seem as if we don't really, as if nobody really believes that young women have agency, right? We give them rights, we give them responsibilities, but we don't really think that they actually, can make their own decisions, right? We
I
don't,
mean,
because we don't
right.
really we don't treat them like they actually have agency when you see things like this, right?
I think it's the same for where we are in a society developmentally for boys too, right? So I think that it very much depends on how they've been raised. And, some girls, I would say much more sheltered, less experienced. They don't know what to expect. They're more easily swayed and very naive. And absolutely, I would say they're not as well armed to make wise decisions, shall we say. But I also,
I find so girls don't really mature faster than boys when they're that young, right? So boys and girls, they mature at about the same rate, would you say? Because you would think that because the common wisdom is that we say girls mature
right.
faster than boys, but if that were true, then women who are 18 to 25 years old would definitely be more mature than boys of their same age, which might imply that they might have the agency and the wisdom to make those kinds of decisions, to be with
So
a
I
man
think,
who is 30 years older, right?
okay, but I think
You see where
that's
I'm
where
going with that? You
I
see where I'm
do.
going with
And
that? Oh.
I do. And I would say this is where the difference comes in, is where girls do mature physiologically
Right.
earlier than boys.
But not
Now,
mentally.
I think the mental development is, that's more a matter of nurture, right? And so that's why I think we're in a different place now than we were, say, even 50 years ago. And I was going to ask you though,
it just seems so strange.
I-
It's like women can't lose no matter where they are in life. They always get the benefit of the doubt no matter where they are in life. If they're before the age of 18, then they're maturing faster than boys. And that's why we have schools set up to arrange for the young ladies. But then once they hit that age, once they're 18 to 25, right in that time, all of a sudden they become absolute morons who can't govern themselves and who certainly can't make a decision to be with a man 30 years older than them. It's like it's an incredible juxtaposition of the view of young ladies.
So, well, I will tell you that my daughters will not follow or do not fall into that camp. That's because they have been raised to be cognizant of those things. But let's think about this though, because 20, 30 years ago, what did we call young women who were going for much older men?
Gold diggers?
Yeah. Yeah, because here's the thing, when you're looking at those scenarios, most commonly, not all the time, but most commonly, young women who go for men that are that much older, there's money involved. Like they're not just going for,
sure?
Joe the plumber. Yes, absolutely. Do you think they're going for Joe the plumber down the street who's 30 years older than them? Not happening.
Well, that's because of his job. That's not because of his that's not because of income. But there is this women, I think in general, they like to climb social status ladders, right? So maybe not Joe the plumber down the street, but some guy who's got a decent white collar job, or maybe he makes good money working at an auto dealer or something like that.
Yeah.
Status is more valuable than money. So yeah, you could say, women might like sugar daddies, but I can tell you that younger women, they like older men, not even if they don't have any money, if they have status. Ask me how I know.
Well, and typically status, well, not always, but typically status and money do go hand in hand. But we also have always said too, that, girls who go for much older men also have daddy issues. And that's also often true just from a basic human psychology point of view.
But not always. Maybe
not always. There are outliers.
Maybe there are maybe young women who are adults, right? Maybe between the ages of 18 to 25. Let's even say 21 to 25, because I know when a woman's still a teenager, there's still going to be that the fainting couches have to be brought out if she dates somebody even 5 years older than her. Let's say 21 to 25, right? These are mature adult women. These are women who can vote, they can open a bank account, they can't rent a car just yet, right? So maybe 23 to 27, right? But if they were dating a man who is 30 years older than him, there's always that stink eye, right? It's almost, could we look at the old man like, oh, he's a pervert? Like we like to shame men for following their biological imperatives. But have you noticed that the opposite isn't necessarily true? That we sort of applaud, society sort of applauds when the genders are reversed on that age difference. Have you noticed that?
So that is true. Well, and I think we can partially attribute that to men because, when you talk about cougars, you hear that reference earlier. Men don't necessarily talk about cougars in a negative sense, right? Okay, so I think those connotations.
Johnny Rankin's calling me out. Austin, just stop with your naive accusations about women always having it so easy. Life is the way I like to look at it real quick. I'll let you go, Camelia. Is life is like a video game. And
Oh boy.
when you're young and you're a woman, you live life on easy mode, right? Things are simple for you. Men pay attention to you. You're young, you're beautiful. People are going to give you things, they're going to be nicer to you. There's going to come a time in your life when you might actually start to get to where life is on medium mode. It's going to feel like extra hard, sloppy, super sloppy death mode because you've never faced real challenges ever in your life. You are the most privileged class of people in the world. Young, beautiful women in the United States are the most privileged class of people in the world. I think you would agree with me on that, wouldn't you? Young, beautiful women in the United States are the most privileged cast of people on this planet right now. You would agree?
Maybe.
Okay. And then to be a man is to grow up with life on hard mode, right? And then as you get a little bit older, if you work and distinguish yourself, you might get to easy mode. But for the most part, the best most men can get is to go from hard mode to medium mode. We just aren't the same, and we want and have different needs, and we have different biological imperatives. It just seems as if, men are shamed for following theirs, but women are applauded for following theirs. Nobody really gives young women crap for being the gold digger. What if she's the one taking advantage of the old man, the poor old man who she's fleecing for all he's worth?
Totally agree. And I will say, in Joni's defense, she's not wrong. I know like your thing is like, we've got to, we're generalizing, and it's true where we are in society right now, because we're in response mode to feminism. And there's just been this trend in the country. But the truth is that, we generalize, but the truth is that there are a lot of guys out there who just don't have their crap together, and you can only blame other people to a certain point, right? At some point we all have to take responsibility for ourselves.
Sure, but Camelia, men who don't have their crap together, they're not dating women 30 years younger than them.
No, exactly. That's true.
Yes. So who is generally the type of man who could potentially pull, let's say the woman is 25 years old, right? And the man is 30 years older than she is. What kind of a man is that? He's got to be quite a man, doesn't he?
Sure. Yeah, I would say, when you talk about a successful, whether you want to call it alpha or whatever you want to call it, like that is our high value man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. So the question is like, should we shame that? Okay, maybe not. It's all about what people are looking for in a relationship. But for a young woman going into that, the reason why they've been called gold diggers is because a 30-year difference is just not, as you get older, is not sustainable. And, eventually, if he's a high value man and has money and he hasn't done a good job with his prenup, she's going to come out benefiting from that with a lot of her life left to live.
Amelia, it just seems to me that on the right, that especially, when we talk about pushing back against feminism, right? We talk about pushing back against leftist, Marxist feminism. There seems to be a misunderstanding about what the pushback against feminism is going to look like. What do you think that the pushback to feminism will actually look like in society? What will be the hallmarks that society has finally started to push back away from the gynocracy?
I think we're seeing it right now. I think that we're seeing it in what we have watched with the backlash to the trans movement and transitioning kids when they are minors, because I think those are all outcomes of the feminist movement. And so I think that we are seeing it in that backlash. I think we are seeing very positive signs that we are going headed the other direction on that issue. And I also think that, when we talk about mainstream, what red pill masculinity movement that's become mainstream right now, it is a little bit of a parody of what it's supposed to be as far as what's gotten attention. But I do think that there are upsides to that, in that we are at least talking about it more. Unfortunately, the stupidest people, are the loudest, but it is what it is. At least I guess we're talking about it. And I just thought,
who do you like? Who do you recommend? Because you say that all the time. The stupidest people are the loudest. Who should people listen to?
I think when you're talking about the red pill movement, first of all, I think that is for men. And I think I think that men should be listening to men. Now, I will say that I think it's instructive for women to read and listen to those people too, to gain just to understand the perspective. I don't think they necessarily need to have a voice in telling men what to do. But, I think that people who are instructive in this area are people like Rollo Tomasi, Ryan Stone, Rich Cooper. There are some others that I can't think of right now, but these are people who have been doing this for a long time. There are also people who, are obviously in control of their lives. They're not selling you something that's unreasonable, like, entertain, like the grifters. It always comes out. It always comes out later on. They're in trouble themselves. They've made all these terrible life decisions for themselves, but they're going to tell you what to do. But, there are some core people in that movement who live very stable lives, practice what they preach, and, they actually give you useful information, and is something that you can take something and do with for yourself. So those are the people that I would recommend. But it's interesting to me to watch this in mainstream conversation now, because I cannot remember who he was responding to, but Elon Musk responded to a tweet kind of in this whole realm. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for Elon to get in, start wading into the red pill discussion. The outcome of that might not be what we want. I don't know. It's maybe a little too much exposure.
For those who are just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to Camelia Peterson. We are friends, not family. We're glad to have her here. She's part of our Freedom family, though, and we're grateful to have her on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. Central Time here on the Wake Up America show. We're talking a little bit about gender issues and the ongoing battle of the sexes. In regards to the dynamics between men and women, I mean, things are broken. It appears as if the red pill community are the only ones who are kind of addressing the brokenness, because whenever you typically have a conversation or things like this in the mainstream, we typically get the leftist feminist views of things, right? There's the accusations that people who bring these things up are incel. I get referred to as an incel, which is quite hilarious for bringing up these kinds of topics of conversation. But there does seem to be also resistance to true anti-feminism on the right as well, meaning traditional conservatives are chafed by what they hear and see red pill people saying, right? So they'll try and accuse it of being an atheist movement, even though there are plenty of religious people that are do that. People like Matt Walsh will say, just shut up and get married, right? Michael Knowles and others will say, go ahead, you just need to get married. You don't need to think about it. You're waiting too long to get married and have kids, right? But it seems as if traditional conservatives also do not recognize the actual problems that feminism has inflicted, because it's infected the right as well. There's this sort of, the red pill community would call them like the simps or the Captain Save-A-Hose, right? The white knights, if you will. And these traditional conservatives are attacking the red pill community, mostly women, but people like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and others also attacking them, because of the general anti-marriage views that many of these red pill community have. Where do you come down on the TradCon versus Red Pill community? What's your take on that conflict? Because that's happening right now. That's the hottest
Yes.
debate right now.
Right. And I think that this all goes back to your definition of marriage. And I think that the TradCons, they want marriage to be, they will sometimes tell you that they don't, but really what they do want is they want marriage to be a government sanctioned thing, like somebody that there's enforcement in that. That's why you hear them talk about, some of them talk about, getting rid of no fault divorce, things like that. And I think that, a lot of conversation in the red pill community is basically saying that marriage as a contract has been detrimental, because that's what marriage is, right? It's a contract. And there are plenty of people who we know and, that are out there who have had, you can call it whatever you want, but they have had long-term relationships. But people don't call those long-term stable relationships, but they don't call those a marriage if they haven't gone to somebody and signed a paper, right? That, somebody has sanctioned their marriage, whether it be the government or whether it be the church. And, my view on this is that, in traditional conservative roles, when you're talking about Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh and those kind of sort of things, if the church, like marriage should belong to the church, if that's how we're going to define marriage. So I think we have a terminology problem right now too, when it comes to how we view relationships. And because we have entangled marriage so intricately with the state, that has turned out to be bad for men. And we have seen the ramifications of that. And I do think that, the response from the TradCon right has been simplistic. It has been, very much just, get married, and now it's get married young and go get, marriage counseling before, like, and I'll just be like, this is something we could get into another time, but I actually think that marriage counseling is more detrimental than it is a positive. I think it's in general fairly useless, maybe exceptions. But anyway, I think that, so I just think their response has been simplistic. And I also, you used to hear all the time when I was growing up, at least in my circles anyway, you heard all the time about the Proverbs 31 woman and all the things that a woman was supposed to be and how she works with her hands and she manages her household and she serves her husband and all of these things. And they are all good qualities.
Sounds
but
great.
People will say, right? I mean, people will say, and then people will take the words of Jesus and they will say, well, when they talk about, women being submissive, I guess they were the words of Paul, right? But they were talking about women being submissive to their husbands and things like that. But then he also turns around and they leave off that last half where he says, and, husbands, love your wives as you would your own body, like you are putting your wife on that level. And so too many people just take one part or the other part. And sometimes the church, I think, especially in the last 20 years or so, has taken this part about men loving their wives as themselves and elevated that to such a level that the men end up being subservient to the women, and it's become unbalanced.
One last thing before we let you go on this topic, Camellia. Most women find most men to be ugly, not average, not okay, right? Not hot. Most women find most men to be ugly. Women are choosy. They're picky. They're supposed to be. But they seem to be pickier than they have ever been throughout history. Maybe it's because the options are so fantastic out there. There's so many incredible available men that they can be picky, or maybe something else is going on. Your thoughts on that?
Maybe. I think some of the graphs that have come out, there was one just the other day. It came out. Did it come off of one of the OkCupid or something like that, where it talked about men's views of women versus women's views of men? But anyway, I think that when they ask women questions about men and attractiveness just based on pictures alone, it's lacking, because ask any woman and like what makes a man attractive is not just physical appearance. There are a lot of other things, more so for women than men, that go into whether or not a woman finds a man attractive. And it absolutely has to do with personality, sense of humor, all of those kind of things. Like a man can be like physically less attractive than other men, but if he has the riz to, to carry him, like that really does make a huge difference. I don't think men understand just, how much of a difference that can make. And it is something, I mean, like some men, yes, maybe because of the way they've been raised or personality, and they do just have that more than other men, but there are a lot of things that also can be learned in that respect.
They make sense, but not every man is going to be able to learn those types
Sure.
of social skills. So if you have a larger and larger pool of men who are not going to be able to get a woman, you're going to have, I mean, you can call them incels, whatever you have, but I mean, at this point, we're starting to see more and more young men not having sex. They're in their mid 20s and they're still virgins. I mean, I remember back when people were freaking out because of teenage pregnancies and teenage sex. Now we're freaking out because of the opposite. Elon Musk has weighed in on this when
Right.
the problem of the population. What happens when you have a country full of angry young men who are unable to get partners? What do you think happens in that situation?
I think there's nothing good that comes out of it. But I also think, if there's that many men who are in that boat, like where are the women on the flip side of that? Because there are either, I mean, we've talked about this before, when you talk about like a few men, like this serial monogamy, right? Or
Polygamy.
polygamy, whatever.
Not
There
polygamy, polygyny, right? We're talking
polygamy,
about
yes.
an unmarried relationship where
Yes.
many women choose. This is a woman's choice, by the way. Women
Right.
choose to be with one high value man rather than and to share him rather than to be monogamous with a man they find inferior.
And this is a cultural shift, right? Because the cultural shift has come away, whether you say it started in the 60s, I don't know, whatever, where, free love. And this is where and marriage was viewed less as a social requirement, right? It became less of an expectation because you were expected to get married, at a certain point in, our history. We are less that way now. But I do think that to a certain extent, this is where, some of the things that the red pill movement talks about is a little hypocritical in that men should be able to go out and sow their wild oats and there need to be women available for that. But then the natural outcome is that you have a lot of women who are tied up with these men who are able to do that. And then who are not necessarily wanted long-term by these men because of high body count or whatever, and so it's this vicious circle of things. And I don't know how you break out of that, because I think that's directly tied into the group of men that you're talking about that is growing, who are not getting into relationships.
Well, yeah. And then on the other hand, our society outlaws prostitution, which might give these men an outlet for their aggression that they're feeling because of their pent up sexual energy that they're not allowed to experience. And then, of course, traditional conservatives also want to ban pornography, which would give these men an outlet. But you know what? Perhaps if we're in that situation, maybe there should be a revolution, right? Because men in that scenario, when faced with the reality of, on one hand, never being able to mate, never being able to have kids, never being able to have a relationship, or the other side is revolution. I think a lot of men would rather take their chances with the violence and the chaos, with the possibility that in that chaos, they will be able to take what they want. That seems to be the scenario that's unfolding.
Yeah, and when you talk about legalized prostitution, I mean, there's a reason why it's called the oldest profession, right? And the thing is I think what people balk at right now is that it was always, I mean, like, it's as old as time itself, but it was also, I don't know if there are very many societies at all who viewed it in a positive light. It was always something that's kind of kept away in the corner, swept under the rug, in the dark places, red light district, right? I mean, it was not something you were proud of that you put on Main Street in your society. And I think that's what some people are concerned about now, is that if we legalize it, well, we're normalizing it. And, do we want to go down the road of normalizing that behavior in society. I mean, we're kind of already there in so many ways just because of the digital age.
No one ever wants to say anything nice about prostitutes. No one ever wants to say anything
No.
nice about prostitution. I think it should be legal, but discouraged. However, in some cases, I actually think that might be encouraging to see, for example, people who are disabled. If you think it's difficult for an average man to
Yeah.
be with a woman, think about a disabled man, or think about
Right.
a really, really ugly man. Like, is a man like in that situation, is he supposed to just forego for his entire life the touch of a woman? It's a death sentence, essentially. If you're a young man and you're ugly, or if you're disabled, you're fucked. And society says, fuck you. You don't deserve love. Not only do you not deserve love, and will no one ever give you any love voluntarily, you can't even pay for it. And if you do, we'll take you to jail. I saw this documentary about disabled people who go to Amsterdam and for the first time in their life know the touch of a woman. And I say to myself, you know what?
Yeah.
That's probably a good option for them, because listen, if you're a dude, an average dude, and you can't get any, just imagine what it's like being an ugly dude or being disabled. They're fucked.
It's a fair point. And I think that, the question that we have to wrestle with is, do we normalize something as a society because of the exceptions, right? It's the exceptions, and it's terrible, it's sad, but in the end, it's trade-offs, right?
Yeah. Well, normalized in terms of like taken out of the shadows and put into a situation where it's sequestered and clean, and obviously a red light situation, versus what it is now, which is out on the streets, disgusting, in a situation where it's obviously a bad situation now. But I think there are examples and scenarios where it could be better. But I don't know how you could be so heartless as to say to a man who,
Right.
maybe he got like his face, burned off in Iraq, and he's never going to be able to attract a woman normally, to say to him, no, you just never can know the touch of a woman ever again. Because that's essentially what we're saying as a society,
Right.
to some extent. It's very, very paternalistic in a way.
Sure. And I think that, to legalize it and still kind of maintain that balance that you're talking about also requires a society that has a certain moral foundation, so to speak, right? There has to be that social element when you talk about social shaming and what is acceptable just from a social societal perspective. I mean, like that foundation has to be in place for legalizing it, not to normalize it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Camelia, anything else you'd like to share with our friends before we let you go today? Good conversation.
It was. This was a deep one.
Yeah.
I hope you all have a great day. Like we have to, I think it's important that we keep wrestling with these kind of issues. I think that especially in this digital age where we're able to communicate so much more, like that is the upside to this, to the internet age, is like many more people are having these conversations. And I think this is what advances us as a species and as a society. And I hope it makes us better.
I love it, Camelia. I think it will. Thank you very much for your insight. Thanks for playing along, being such a good sport on these kinds of conversations. I know it's tough, and I know a lot of our friends here in Missouri always bring up whatever we talk about to you in person. So more than a little embarrassing, just even outside the studio. So have a good one. Hey, and I'll
Have a
see
great
you.
day, everyone.
I guess I'll see you on Thursday, but then I guess I'll also see you Friday night in Springfield.
Yes.
Missouri Republican Convention and all. All right. See you then, Camelia. Have a good one. There you go. Give it up to CJ. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? Isn't she precious? What did you guys think of the Wake Up America show today? Did you love it? Yes. Okay. Well, before we go, FYI, I have got something for you, something very special. We have a new hit product over at apforlibertyshop.com. How about this? No offense, but...
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Yes, Norm McDonald. We love you, Norm. Miss you very much. Get your commie gobbledygook Norm McDonald tea over at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. These guys are selling like hotcakes. No offense, but it sounds like some commie gobbledygook. Check it out over at ap4libertyshop.com. You'll be the belle of the ball with your Norm McDonald shirt. And if you haven't seen Stephanie's new hustling and homemaking video, you can see that as well at the very top of ap4libertyshop.com. Her newest one on how to make a Shirley Temple with a little bit of history on the Shirley Temple recipe inside. Enjoy. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the show. Thanks a lot. Wake Up America show bonus content on the innovations that set us free takes a look at the history of refrigeration. This technology may have single-handedly changed humanity away from hunting and gathering into what we are today. Refrigeration and air conditioning are indispensable in modern life, pivotal not only in our homes but also for crucial technologies such as computer servers, underscoring the necessity of cooling systems in contemporary society. The evolution of refrigeration and AC has been marked by significant contributions from various inventors and has profoundly shaped American life, raising the question of how these technologies came to be. Our journey into the history of cooling begins with ancient civilizations in the Middle East and South Asia, where the need for cooling was met with ingenious solutions. You could say that the ancient Egyptians invented the first window unit. They didn't have electricity or the boxy units we use today, though. Instead, they would hang wet reeds on their windows. The water on the reeds would absorb heat from the warm wind, and cool air would enter the building. We've also used refrigeration much longer than you probably expected. The people of ancient Persia and India used to make their own ice. They did it by merely leaving trays of boiled water out at night. Heat leaves the earth through the atmosphere, especially at night when the sun can't add more heat. That's why you may have frost on your roof or car even though it's not freezing outside. The water would freeze due to heat loss. Modern refrigeration and AC, however, involve mechanical processes rather than these primitive methods, signaling a shift towards more controlled environmental cooling. This shift owes much to pioneers like Benjamin Franklin, who in 1758 discovered that evaporating alcohol could cool an environment, a principle that later influenced modern refrigerant development. In his words, evaporating alcohol could bring about the possibility of freezing a man to death on a warm summer's day. That discovery did not immediately lead to inventions, but it came back later. About 170 years later, it led to the development of Freon in 1928. Further contributions came from scientists like William Cullen, Robert Faraday, and Jacob Perkins, with Perkins patenting the first vapor compression refrigeration cycle in 1835, although it wasn't widely adopted at the time. In Florida, physician John Gorey developed a mechanical ice machine to help treat patients by cooling their environments, believing it would aid in treating diseases like malaria and yellow fever. Despite the initial local success of Gorey's ice machine, a series of misfortunes, including the death of his main investor, led to financial ruin and his eventual death in obscurity, though he was later recognized for his contributions. Refrigeration took on a critical role in national affairs during President James A. Garfield's presidency, where an improvised cooling system was used in an attempt to treat his gunshot wounds. When he arrived at the White House, naval engineers quickly rigged a cooling system to promote healing. It was quite simple, consisting of a fan that blew over fabric moistened with blocks of ice and ice water. Medical personnel believed that cooler temperatures would stop infections. They were onto something, but it wasn't enough to save Garfield. Despite their efforts, Garfield died 79 days later. The commercial and technological potential of refrigeration was significantly advanced by Willis Carrier in the early 20th century, who developed an air conditioning system that could cool large spaces efficiently. Carrier's innovations led to widespread public and commercial acceptance of air conditioning, particularly as buildings began to advertise summertime cooling as a luxury. By the 1950s, AC and refrigeration became commonplace in American households, influencing the development of cities and the preservation of food and medicine. Today, these technologies not only provide comfort but support advanced fields like computer science and medicine, though they also pose environmental challenges. Current research in refrigeration technology focuses on reducing environmental impacts through innovative methods, such as solid-state and magnetic-based cooling. The history of refrigeration shows a progression from simple, natural cooling methods to sophisticated technologies that have become integral to modern life, with a future that promises further innovations and environmental considerations. Almost no other technology has made life so much more livable and allowed for human flourishing and freedom than the technology of refrigeration.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to wake up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP4Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at ap4libertyshop.com.